everyone, welcome back to the shop, and in this case specifically the now mostly empty northern half or third of my shop. Today is the day hopefully when we will finally start the process of lifting up this entire side of the building, getting a proper foundation underneath it, and really stabilizing the entire thing so it doesn't sink into the ground. That's obviously pretty important if you want a building to exist. So I'm in the process now of taking up some of this plywood flooring. Obviously this wasn't original. The rest of the floors in here are wooden planks that are presumably original or quite close to it. But I'm assuming because of the building sinking over here, these all rotted out and they just replaced them with plywood. The plywood's still in decent shape, so probably in the past 10 years, maybe not even that long. I had thought the reason that the building was sinking was just structural issues and the sill beam rotting away on this side. As it turns out, the sill beam is very much still there on that side. The building is just no longer on top of it, because as the building is compressed over time, it's pancaked out at the bottom slightly. Now we've got these big rebar tie rods in the top floor, which help keep the top at pretty much the width it's supposed to be, but nothing is stopping the bottom from splaying out. So when we lift it up, the effect is going to be it's going to lift up, take the tension off of the posts that are splaying out like that, and have them be, if not perfectly plumb, at least much closer to it than they are now, and seated on big concrete blocks that will not move, and seated back on top of the sill beams that they're supposed to be on. So let me get you a little closer and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm not sure how easily you can see this, but obviously the bricks here are buckling out, and this is again a function of the posts bending out of the way at the bottom. The main post on this corner is right here. However, the sill beam, I don't know how well you can see it, is here. But so part of the issue is that this beam is just, or this post, is just not attached to the rest of the building in any meaningful way. So once this gets fixed and put into place, that will presumably make a large difference in the overall structure. And hopefully fix a lot of the issues with these brick walls that I'm kind of afraid to touch. So now, in advance of the lifting guys hopefully getting here later today, I need to start taking up as much of this floor plywood as possible to get out of their way. So I'm going to crack on with that. Well, about 1 sweaty hour later, I managed to get these couple of pieces, as well as that wall, as well as that section. So at least there's about a 4-foot space at the north end of the building that can be used. You can see that the original foundation over here is no more. And obviously they've put in these kind of joists. Now these were done badly, as you might be able to see. They're unevenly spaced. These two on the end look like they might be 16 inches on center. The rest of them are well over that. That third one from the right, the one I'm pointing at, just doesn't have a joist hanger. Guess they just didn't bother. You have 2x6s on that end, and on this one, instead of the 2x8s or 2x10s that the rest are. So now I gotta go in and fix that too. But once we get the building lifted, that should hopefully be a little bit easier. But I will check in with you once they are here. Middle of day one now. I've been kind of showing clips in. I've been trying to film without getting in the way as much as I can because these guys are swinging big equipment around and I don't want to be underfoot. But you can see we've got these pillars and beams that they're putting together. Now the 4 in the corner each have a big old jack in it. And those are connected to a central system so they can all be raised and lowered simultaneously or in a coordinated way. But it's been really interesting. I live at the end of a weird street that's tough to get materials down, so they've been working some magic getting the I-beams in place. But what's essentially going to happen, there's going to be a big I-beam, and you can see where they've cut holes in the walls, and that's going to be what is actually lifted, and that's going to pull the rest of the shop with it, and hopefully nothing will fall over. Once that's done, they can go in with the excavator and put in the big concrete piers. They weigh several hundred pounds each, probably more than that. Should do a really good job holding this in place for a long time yet to come. And then it's just a matter of figuring out what I'm gonna do. So I'm just gonna keep kind of floating around these guys. I also have to do my actual job, while this is all happening, so I'm kind of popping out here and there when the weather's nice and just trying to keep an eye on what's happening. But it should be very exciting. I'm still amazed that this little 12 horsepower lawnmower engine, essentially, connected to the gas lines pointed out here, running to all the individual jacks, was able to lift up not only the steel I-beam, but then take the weight of the entire building. Right here they're using a surveying tool called a transit to establish a straight line from the more stable back of the shop to the front, so everything would be more or less lined up. I don't know exactly how it works, but it involves a spinning laser.
Center there, guys. Hold on, slow. Slow. More. Yep. Good.
The lifting crew just went home after the first day of work, leaving me now with 2 I-beams. They go from this side all the way out the other wall, opposite side of this building. Currently this side, the one facing me right now, is lifted about 2 inches off the ground. So there's actually air under the wall, which is kind of terrifying, but It's being well supported. There's a whole bunch of cribbing inside. I'll show you in a second. Tomorrow they're going to start excavating to put in the piers, which are the concrete blocks. I believe on the 2 inner sides they want to finish those first, and then get to the outside ones once the interior is a little more shored up. Now, I kind of knew this was going to be the case already, and I'll show you in a second as well, but the bottom of that post over there, on that corner, and presumably most of the others, is rotted pretty substantially. It's obviously a big part of why this building needed to be lifted in the first place. So here you can see this is the northwest corner post. Pretty much that bottom of that siding was what was touching the ground before, so we're up about 2 inches, maybe 3. For whatever reason, there's actually this big concrete piece that they poured over here, I think is a temporary stabilizing measure, long before I moved in. And that actually came up with the building, which we were not expecting. So it's possible we can actually leave that there. We're not entirely sure. It might fall apart pretty much at any time. So that'll be a fun adventure. It's kind of dodgy sticking my finger under a building that's lifted up in the air. Probably shouldn't do this, but I'm gonna. It's not horrible, but it's not something I want to support a building on. So carve that up. I think even if I go about 4 inches up to right about where my finger is here, that's still pretty solid. A little surface softness here and there, but nothing that's gonna cause any problems. And the good news is, once I redo all the siding and all that, it's all gonna be vapor barriers, and water issues are going to be much less of a concern going forward than they were, because they built this 150 years ago when Tyvek didn't exist, and they didn't really care if it lasted 200 years. So now I gotta clean that all up. So here are the 4 jacks. So there's 4 sets of cribbing, which is what this is called, the wooden blocks here. These are these big hydraulic jacks that lift up the beams, and then they shim the beams whenever they get them into whatever position they want. All 4 of these jacks, there's one here, one over there, one over there, one in that corner, are powered by this machine, which is like a 12 horsepower Honda, pretty much a lawnmower. So with about 12 horsepower, you can apparently lift up a whole building, which is kind of wild. You can actually kind of already see the slope in the roof starts really right there, but it is coming back up a little bit here. So by the time they really get everything shored up and footed, the building will never, ever, ever be perfectly square. But hopefully this line on the roof will be considerably closer than the kind of wave you get right now. Yeah, I told these guys I would come out every 90 minutes and just film for a minute, and just hopefully that cuts together into a little show of progress. Upside is, but at least there's no window in there to get broken. Might not look like much, but that is a much straighter roof line than I was previously in possession of, which is good news. Let me take you on a walk, we'll go through it. So today the crew got the building pretty much fully lifted. I didn't get any film of it, partially because I had to do my real job while they were working, and partially because they really only went about a 1/4 inch at a time, so over video it wasn't going to look like much. If I had more cameras, I would have set up a time-lapse camera to catch it, but I don't, so unfortunately that is something we did not get to experience together. But, going through, they got the pier on this side and the one opposite fully installed, and then we're going to do the 3 on the north face, hopefully tomorrow. So as you can see, trying not to brain myself on an I-beam, the pier still needs to be joined up to the rest of the building, so I got some pressure-treated 8x8s that I'm going to replace a lot of the lower sill beams, probably about another 4 feet of that one, because you can see that's in pretty rough shape, as well as make sort of the connecting points reaching up from the piers to the rest of the structure. Obviously, pretty much all of the bottom of the siding was previously on the ground, so you can get a feel for about how much we lifted it up. I say we, I didn't really do anything. This corner is probably the best example of it, because that was fully underground. I think you couldn't even see that nail. Obviously, that sill beam is shot all to hell, so that's going to have to get cut off. What I'm going to end up doing most likely is doing a half lap, maybe about here on most of these posts, depending on how bad they are. This is probably the worst of them, and even this one is okay once you get above where it was in ground contact, but I'll probably give myself an extra 6 or 8 inches just to be safe. The pier right here will actually be justified probably about 2 inches to my left, because, as I'll show you in a minute, the entire front of the building is kind of pancaked out at the bottom, and we're going to do our best to get that back in place-ish. Something to remember is that this is never going to be a perfectly square, perfectly flat, perfectly brand new looking building. It just won't happen. But we can get it relatively close, and that's kind of what we're aiming for. They put in this cribbing up here just to give the building a little extra support in the center. That post in that corner pushed out that way. The center one pushed towards the camera, and that one in that corner pushed that way. And so we gotta try to bring those all back to center a little bit. You can see over here, this is probably the roughest bit of siding, just how bad it was. Now this sill beam down here is a creosote treated beam that I imagine was actually relatively recently added. I'm going to end up completely replacing it because I want the sill beam, funnily enough, to run the entire width of the building instead of just to the door. I think the folks who ever did this sill beam cheaped out a little bit. So there was just nothing supporting this corner, which again did not help. So that'll all be pressure treated. Yeah, just a big old gaping hole. Obviously all the siding needs to be replaced, but that was going to have to happen anyway. Over here's probably the most interesting section. They had a tricky time with the excavator because we have this little brook that runs right here, and they were trying not to swamp themselves out, but it looks like they were able to make it work. This post, arguably in the worst shape of any of them, but again, I think if you go even up to here, it's pretty darn solid again. It's old and beat up, but it's not going to go anywhere. You can see this sill beam by a considerable margin the worst of them, because where that ratchet strap should be an 8x8, and that's maybe 3 inches thick, and it's pretty heavily rotted all the way through. So that's gotta have to be fully replaced. I might see if I can save any of these beams for other purposes, but I'm not really counting on it. As you can see, we got this pier in here just fine. Now this one's not quite under the actual post, because this is the post, which we were able to knock a little straight. It was a little crooked, so it's still right there. However, this sill beam is still 100% rock solid, and probably is for another 3 or 4 feet that way before it starts to really degrade. So we're not worried about this as far as stability goes at all. It's not as visually nice, but I don't really care about that. But that is progress, and the good news is with this done, I can really start moving on to all the next stuff. Alright, so I will check back in tomorrow which will hopefully be the last day that the full crew is here doing actual construction. There's probably a couple more days of setup, and obviously they're gonna have to come pull everything out. Then it'll just be on to me doing the foundation work, which, you know, I can lift 8x8s by myself, right? I don't need any heavy equipment. Should be great. Should be great. Should be great. But man, is that a nice straight roof line. It honestly, the building just looks so much prouder now. I know it's in a state right now, but just having it not be completely wonky really makes it look a little bit more dignified. Exciting stuff. I don't know whether this is fun or just kind of unnerving, but when the building's flying in the air, you can grab one of the 8x8 structural posts and move the whole thing, oh, you know, a few inches. That's a weird sensation. In the process of excavating, we actually found this really cool old porcelain license plate. It's issued in the year 1913 when there were about 4,000 cars in the entire state. Apparently it could be worth something, so I'll have to keep you updated on that in future videos. All right, end of day 3 of lifting, and the building is lifted. Yeah. I apologize for the continuity here, error because I did get a haircut in the process of this. Much needed. But, in any case, we now have the entire building hoisted up. It's sitting on the cribbing and these 2 I-beams, as well as that additional piece of cribbing right inside the door is supporting the ceiling on this side. And now it is just a matter of getting the sill beams replaced and getting everything joined together and hooked into one building, so that in a couple weeks these guys can come back, take all their stuff out, and this will just stay where it currently is. Let me take you on a walk around and I'll walk you through one more time what we're going to do. Alright, so starting at the northwest corner, you can see just the top edge of the pier here. What I'm going to end up doing is half-lapping the 2 sill beams onto each other here, and then there's a thread hole. Very, very weird sticking your hand under a building. But yeah, there's a threaded hole right there in the center of the piers. And what I'll do is get probably 2 feet of threaded rod, maybe a little less, threaded into there, and then the replacement piece for this guy, for the bottom of this, which I will again half lap onto the vertical. And that will help just keep everything aligned, assuming I do my math correctly and drill everything correctly. And then I will use a fun technique to get a nut on it up here. You can see that this post especially is not even close to plumb. It's probably about a 3-inch variance at the bottom from the top. We ran a plumb bob up and did our best lining up the pier. I say we, they did it. I was there, just being in their way. But yeah, so what I'm going to do is get all the foundation where it should be, and then when they come to take all their stuff out, they'll help me ratchet strap or use a come along or something like that to kind of pull everything into place. Pretty much the same deal with these 2 as well. This one is out this way too much, but honestly this one's dangling so much you could probably push it by hand if this cribbing weren't in the way. So that one shouldn't be too hard to deal with. And then same with this guy, except it's going that way. This one wasn't off plumb by as much, so we're probably about 2 inches justified towards the center. In the process, we did find a bunch of old horseshoes. I'm sure there are dozens of them in the ground over here, so I'm going to try to salvage all those, make a nice little horseshoe wall. And the good news is, for all of you who like my content, this being done means there's now an endless amount of work I need to do, all or most of which I intend to film, just for all of you to come along with me. Since there was such a big gap in between my two previous videos, which I don't plan on making a habit of, but sometimes life just happens, partially it was because I couldn't get this done, and so I didn't really want to do more project videos in the shop that was not even close to set up. Filming just got cumbersome, especially after the picture frame video, so I gave up on that temporarily. But now, hopefully, at least once a month, probably more, I'll be trying to do updates from this, because we still have to do the foundation, the floors, the roof, the windows, the walls, the insulation, heating, electrical, maybe plumbing. It's gonna go on for a while. I got my work cut out for me. Since there was such a big hiatus between my videos, YouTube has really stopped recommending them. I watched my daily view count go from between 100 and 200 to now it's about 30, which is my own fault, again, because I stopped uploading and YouTube recognized that I was no longer active. But I'm hoping now that I get back on the horse, that bounces back up, and the best way you can help me do that is if you could subscribe if you haven't already, like the video, comment, share it with your friends who you think might be interested, and yeah, just stay along with me and we'll keep getting this done, one little piece at a time, or one big piece at a time, as the case may be. Thanks very much, and I will see you soon as we tackle the foundations for these. Thanks.